I'm going to start this One Piece theory video with a big statement. Haki and devil fruits are the same thing. Wait, what? Yeah, I think to a certain extent, devil fruits are just hacks for Haki, kind of like a cheat code. This theory is sort of stemming off of my fourth Haki, natural Haki theory, so it'll make more sense if you watch those videos first. But essentially, I think that Haki and devil fruits are paths to the same thing. At peak levels, they both would look the same and can work the same, to the extent where the fruits are basically training wheels for Haki mastery. I usually stray away from front-loading my theories, but this time I think it makes sense to say that first. I know that sounds crazy and so weird, but when you kind of think of it, at peak levels, some of the strongest people in One Piece don't have devil fruits, and even the people that do don't blindly rely on it for asserting their dominance. Blackbeard is a little bit of an exception to this, but okay, so what do I mean by this? Basically, even without my fourth Haki theory, Haki is essentially willing your spiritual energy to achieve a certain goal. Conqueror's Haki is then affecting someone else's spirit based on your will. Then my fourth Haki theory is that you can then start to begin to will natural energy. The ones people are most familiar with would be the basic elements, which is why fishmen can manipulate water so easily, and if you watch my theory video, I have an idea that starts to make it make sense for Lunarians and Minks for their respective elements. But we also covered that you don't have to be one of those races to command the elements. We've seen examples in primarily the Revolutionary Army that supports that, Sabo and Koala specifically, and then Sanji being the Avatar and all. But essentially, when you break it down, the fourth Haki is kind of energy manipulation. The idea that Sanji creates his flame because it reflects his soul, he is willing the energy around him to burn as hot as his soul. But essentially, it's him willing energy to his desire. I like to think that's the same logic behind Luffy's Red Hawk, and here when Zoro wills his blade to ignite when he slices Ryuma's corpse so that he could finally rest in peace. Both Luffy and Zoro exhibit incredible will, and they both have demonstrated physical manifestations of their will multiple times. I will deep dive both of them soon. Zoro's next. But so the next part of energy manipulation is understanding that in the One Piece world, everything has energy, demonstrated through things like the voice of all things. And if we look at this scene that I like to call breath of all things with Zoro, he finds that everything is breathing. The stones, the ground, the tree, his sword. He can feel life in everything, even steel. And then because it's his will to cut steel, he is able to do it. But so if you can manipulate energy with Haki, and everything in One Piece can be manipulated, then can you earthbend? Bend not just energy, but also matter to your will? Yes, in the One Piece world, you 100% can. There are many examples of this, but the two examples that stay on topic are Doflamingo and Katakuri. They both awaken their devil fruit powers and are then able to convert the matter around them to the material they are given innate command over. We know that both of them have high tier Haki and Conqueror's Haki, and I think that awakening requires either the fourth Haki or Conqueror's Haki. Excluding Zoan awakenings that aren't really manipulating inanimate matter, it seems like it's more contingent on Conqueror's Haki. Which makes sense because Conqueror's is affecting the spirit of others, and if you're aware of natural energy, then you could conquer that with your will also. And this brings me to the point where I explained devil fruits are basically training wheels for peak Haki. If Haki is the ability to will your desire to existence and it manifesting into various energy conversions referencing my previous videos, then elemental abilities require a certain level of intimacy and understanding to will it into existence. Devil fruits force intimacy with the specific substance or element, allowing you to more seamlessly bring your will into existence. Using this logic, that would mean that Logia users are given essentially cheat codes to convert their own spiritual energy into the specific natural energy that the devil fruit is specified for. So if you had a peak Haki user who lived long enough to get to that level and spent a significant portion of their lives learning and understanding ice, for example, then eventually they would be able to learn to change themselves into ice without needing a devil fruit. But realistically, the amount of people who have the lifespan for this and dedication would practically be zero, which is something that makes the Giants super interesting to me because they have longer lifespans and they may have examples of people reaching this level of enlightenment. Without going into all of the wide-spanning paramecia powers and linking them yet, which I want to do, for this video I'm going to stick to the ones that generate substances. These have a lot of overlap with Logia, and apparently the primary distinction that separates them, like in Katakuri's case, who has a special paramecia rather than a Logia, is that the abilities of paramecias that generate substances are man-made rather than natural elements, which typically cover the Logia powers. That being said, let's talk about the one special paramecia so far. Katakuri's mochi fruit. It could technically be considered a Logia, in my opinion, because mochi is technically rice, but let's stick with the idea that mochi is a man-made substance and it's definitely a paramecia fruit. That being said, maybe Katakuri's fruit isn't a special paramecia because of mochi, but instead it's because of Katakuri, and a combination of factors that has allowed him to use it in a special way. Katakuri is an extremely smart and adaptable character to begin with, along with top-tier Haki in all categories. On top of that, given the environment of Whole Cake Island and the sweets that Big Mom surrounds all her children with, to the point where it seems like each kid could probably be an expert in their relative sweet, probably to appease Big Mom, this probably allowed Katakuri to gain insane insight into rice or mochi, to the point that he could easily convert his natural energy into it, which is the basis of a Logia fruit. Even though substance paramecia fruits are from man-made substances, it's not like man-made substances aren't derivatives from nature. Taking that into consideration, mochi is considerably easier to make from rice than it is to make rubber from tree sap. So maybe all it takes is really understanding the process of making that man-made object to turn the paramecia into a special paramecia like Katakuri's. And if you're thinking all this matter manipulation is completely out of thin air, and this definitely isn't how powers work in One Piece, well, it's already been introduced. There's an ability in One Piece where once you intimately understand your body, you can will it to do anything, change shapes and forms, and this technique is Semi-Kikan, introduced to us by the CP9, and I just want to add that a lot of people treat the techniques introduced to us by the CP9 as completely different concepts from the concepts we're learning right now, when a lot of them are literally the basics to crazier things we are being exposed to now. I'll make a separate video on that though. But going back, Semi-Kikan is a technique that grants users complete control over all of their body parts and bodily functions. So basically what I'm saying is that if a paramecia learns this, then they could function a lot like Katakuri and probably end up being a special paramecia, more similar to a Logia. And I think this is backed up by the fact that Oda has even said that if someone were to eat a devil fruit, that doesn't mean that they would automatically command it the same way as anyone else. It would take years of practice to get to Katakuri's level, if that were even ever possible for anyone else. So if someone else ate the mochi fruit, it might not necessarily be a special paramecia with them. And Katakuri specifically is able to make it a special paramecia, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of factors that allows Katakuri to be able to completely master his devil fruit to the full potential. Then, to awaken paramecia like Katakuri and Doflamingo, on top of having really intimate knowledge of the power given to them, they have to have Conquerors or Fourth Haki to then manipulate energy and matter, then allowing them to convert other energies to their will. So I wanted to save this for a separate Luffy video, but given Luffy has started to master other states of rubber by vulcanizing it with heat, maybe Luffy will also attain this level of understanding of rubber that allows him to become a special paramecia like Katakuri, and possibly awakening it also. Which would make sense since his last major fight was with Katakuri, and Luffy has a knack for learning from past fights, even during fights also. Okay, but going back to the main point of this video, Haki will probably eventually allow for matter manipulation, and the natural elements are the ones that most people are most normally exposed to, thus being the basic ones that are being manipulated. Logia fruits essentially allow you to have a shortcut to learning and understanding the elements, and that being said, to be able to achieve the same level of efficiency as a Logia user is probably impossible. So like in a straight up firefight, Sabo or Ace would probably still win right now against an elemental fire user. But it makes me curious, if you watch my double layered eye video, then you know that apparently Mihawk's alternate ego is able to spontaneously combust into flames. It makes me wonder who that entity is. All this being said, I don't think we will be seeing straight up matter manipulation fighting. Awakened paramecias, which take natural life and convert them into man-made substances, isn't exactly accessible to a lot of people because it would require intimate knowledge of the man-made substances and nature, and there's not really examples of people in One Piece that... Oh wait, Vegapunk! I have a super interesting theory about Vegapunk that makes him terrifyingly powerful coming up. Another ADHD tangent. So going back to the main topic, something that has been bothering me is that ever since the introduction of Haki, it seems like Logias, which are the rarest and arguably the most powerful at the base level, kind of have fallen off. On top of Armament Haki basically disrupting Logia powers, and now with awakened paramecias and special type of paramecias, Logias kind of seem less broken than they did pre-timeskip. Some people might be feeling like Ace's Fire Fruit is kind of obsolete now that we've seen what it seems like most advanced Haki users demonstrating fire abilities to some extent. Like even Doflamingo's Overheat, what even is that? But obviously, as I mentioned before, I think the Flame Fruit would give the user an advantage over those fire manipulation powers. But still, it feels like Logia users are going to have an upgrade, or at least we're going to learn higher levels of their powers. And that would make sense because the Admirals are heavily Logia users. Like what if a Logia user with Conqueror's Haki could just turn others into their element by converting not just their own spirit into the natural element, but other spirits also, making it so that the only people who could approach are other Conquerors or people with full body armament Haki. I mean, we saw structures turning into man-made substances. I don't think it's too much of a stretch for them to start turning other life into other natural elements. This could be why Aokiji and Donut Maker had to go to Punk Hazard to go all out in their fight, otherwise they would have just dusted anyone near them pretty much. I mean, to be fair, we see people being turned into toys and being forgotten, so it's not too crazy to think that any of what I said is possible. I want to get into the other paramecia powers and start grouping them to show how it relates back to my natural Haki theory and this devil fruit theory. There's also the devil fruit origin theory, and I think it relates back to the energy of the sea. And just to clarify another thing, though it's difficult, I believe all classes of devil fruits can be recreated through natural means, and that's a hint towards my future power-up videos. Thanks for watching. Make sure to watch the previous videos to understand this one better. Also, if you like my content, check me out on YouTube or TikTok. In October, I might start posting some Marvel content on YouTube. Let me know if that interests you guys on TikTok also.